Hello and welcome to another Wolftime gaming video. Today I'm going to be painting these Oathmark Dwarves, specifically the actual wizard himself. The other ones, essentially they follow the same sort of scheme, so you'll get the idea of the direction I go in. These really are awesome models. I couldn't really find a decent dwarf wizard anywhere other than with Oathmark, which is why I picked these up to use in Frostgrave. Before we get started on the painting though, let's get that kettle on. Okay, so as usual, once you've got the models actually cleaned up and any little bits and pieces taken off there, like the mould lines and things like that, is to stick them on a base. I've just put a little bit of a mix of fine sand and grit and a couple of rocks on there that I've picked up recently. And then it's a case of base coating the whole mini. In this instance I've used Wraithbone, which is a Games Workshop spray, as I've used with many other models, so I can use the contrast paints. So the first colour I'm actually going to use is Corvus Black, and that's to do the eyes essentially. All I'm doing is drawing a line from the centre of the eye near the nose and pulling it out to the edge, just to make a dark area in a line essentially. Continuing with the eyes, the next step is to actually do the eyeball itself, and to do that I've used White Scar. I've done exactly the same process, just from the middle of the eye near the nose, pulling out to make a line again, which essentially creates a white area with darkness surrounding. Try and avoid, if you want to do something like this, a circle, because you look at an eye doesn't look like a circle at all. It is more of like a line, a slit in the face, and it looks more realistic when you're actually doing the model. To paint the actual iris itself, again I've just gone back to Corvus Black, and I'll just do a dot in the centre of the eye, or a direction that I'm wanting the model to look. And this then looks quite effective. There's no real messing around with any of this stuff, and it looks quite good. If you do mess up on anything and go over with a black or anything like that, just go over with a creamy colour or a White Scar again, just around those areas that you may have made a mistake on. To continue with the actual facial features, I've then moved on to the skin, which is Contrast Golem and Flesh in this instance. It's a great paint. I've used this a lot recently with many of the actual the minis I'm painting, because essentially it's a really good paint and it's so easy to get onto the model. Try not to put it on too thickly, I will really stress that. It will pool and it won't look as nice, but if you do make that mistake, just go back to your sort of standard paints and just touch it up. The next colour I've moved on to is another contrast paint. In this instance it's Skeleton Horde, and I've done the boots and his hood in this sort of a colour. It's sort of a light tan colour, and I thought like a leathery sort of an effect, and it looks quite effective on the boots. I've used this in many of the other dwarf models that I've painted. You may have seen those videos going back a little while now, but they are still online, so go and check those out. But essentially it's a different colour. To go alongside the browns and things, which we've now moved on to, which is in this instance again it's another contrast paint, and it's Contrast Wildwood. And what I'm doing with the brown, I'm using it for like the underclothes essentially, so it's not the main colour of the mini, but I wanted it to look different from the rest. I don't want all the clothes blending into one another. I also use the Contrast Wildwood for the belt and his pouches and things, because again it's going to be different from the rest of the actual miniature. It's going to make it stand out a little bit more. I did consider using the contrast Skeleton Horde with this colour as again for the actual leather, but I didn't want it to use too much of that really and oversaturate it. Then move to Contrast Black Templar, and there's a few areas on the model I wanted to paint, specifically the raven that he's holding, or the crow. I'm not really sure which one it is, probably a raven. And I've also painted the inside of the sleeves on his cloak as well, to really make it look like darker areas in that area. It does take a couple of coats to do that as well. Again, then I've then painted the staff again with this contrast Black Templar, purely because again I didn't want it to blend in with the rest of the model. You know, he's right next to the pouches and things, so if I've gone with a wood colour, then it wouldn't look as effective, wouldn't stand out as much as going with the black. I then picked out a little bit of gold. I've got some Retributor armour that I've had kicking around for a while now. You may have seen me use it a few times in the past with Custodes. It's a great golden colour and looks really effective. And there's like a slight lip around the bottom of his the ball on the top of this staff, and it's perfect for using that gold colour just to make it stand out a little bit more. I then moved on to the red, which in this instance is Contrast Blood Angels Red. It's a great red colour, really nice colour, nice and bright. I've essentially painted the top of his staff, the ball, which is sort of like the magical part, I suppose. And he's got like a tabard that he's wearing that I've painted as well. In the past I painted a gnome, which is going to be this guy's apprentice, and he's got red on the inside of his cloak. So I thought that would tie in nicely with maybe their order. Now the main sort of colour I've been going with my dwarfs is greens and things, so the main colour I've used is Caliban green. Now I did consider flipping over and using the contrast paints for this, however I have used Caliban green for quite some time with my dwarf models, and I wanted it to really match it nicely, and I've got some left, so I didn't bother going and getting the contrast paint in the end, and I've gone with that. Just on his main robe, so it's the main colour of the model really, and you'll see at the end result as well. When I painted the other models, I went down exactly the same route with this Caliban green. Just to highlight those areas, I've actually used Warboss green, which is a much brighter green, and I've basically concentrated around where these elbow is, where the any of the folds are, the raised areas, just to highlight those a little bit really. And I've done that in a dry brush sense, so it went on quite quickly. Then moving on to the beard, as you can see I left it completely free of paint, kept it the base coat of Wraithbone, and all I'm doing with this is going over it with Nuln Oil, which will darken it down. I wanted it to be look very sort of Gandalf the White-esque, really, so a really bright beard, where really light beard as opposed to a dark grey older looking dwarf beard that I've done with everybody else, but I think it's gone to quite a nice effective grey here. Moving on to the basing, I used another contrast paint, which is the Black Templar. Again, went back to that just for the rocks really, because they add the shaded areas and the highlights straight in. I could have highlighted this a little bit more and gone with a lighter grey to really pick out the detail of the rock, but I don't think there's any need to in this instance. The actual base itself was painted with Rhinox hide. If you've been watching any of my other videos, you'll know that Rhinox hide is really my go-to when it comes to basing, purely because it's a really nice deep brown sort of a colour, very muddy sort of a colour, and it's great to have a base to build up on really. It's a really nice colour to start with anyway. Just to highlight some of the areas on the basing, I went with a scorched brown, which is a lot lighter brown, just to pick out all those raised areas really, and just to touch over the top. Again, more like a dry brushing sort of a style, where it's just picking out the top areas. It was then on to actually basing material. I used to use a little bit of static grass, a little bit of flock that I've had kicking around. I had a little bit of clump foliage, you can see there, and I always stick the clump foliage down with super glue and then move on to PVA glue for the static grass and things, because I think it works really well and makes everything stick down nicely. And there we have it, the models are complete. You can see he's looking really effective. I really like this lighter grey beard in comparison to the other ones I've done. You can see the other models there as well, exactly the same colour schemes. The only difference being is you can see on the model on the right there, I've gone with a tan sort of a colour for his belt, which was the Skeleton Horde. I've also used a Xandridus for the beard with a little bit of Reichland Flesh Shade just to shade it. The King model, I've obviously painted his crown gold, went with the red inside of his cloak, and his beard is basically just contrast Black Templar. So they're looking really effective. There's a little bit of variety with them, but they all follow that same colour palette, so they've got the same colours on them essentially. So thanks for watching, guys. I really hope you liked the video as much as I liked making it and painting these models. It's a really quick and easy scheme to get your models on the tabletop as quick as possible and get those games in. Make sure you hit that subscribe button to see any more videos from us, and I'll see you in the next one.